Cariel asks his mage companion for a very specific spell. He needs his own hearing completely dampened. Their path to the exit is blocked. A gang of masked killers traps them in the dead end of the maze with murderous intent. Cariel is just a guide. He braces his bandaged arm, thoroughly dissatisfied with his severe disadvantage. But a guide knows the dungeon better than anyone. He reaches down into the dirt and exerts all his physical effort. He rips a screaming mandrake straight out of the soil. The masked assassins freeze in pure panic. Their leader screams at his subordinates to cover their ears. It is too late. The monster's piercing shriek tears through the cavern, dropping the killers in sheer agony. A glowing magical sigil blocks the deadly sound from Cariel's ears. He cannot outmuscle them, so he uses the maze itself as his weapon. This is how a powerless guide survives a world of monsters. Cariel knows entering through the main gate is too obvious, because the maze is crawling with deadly monsters. The fighter suddenly halts the group, warning them that a giant rat is blocking their path. The cleric panics and asks if this is their only route, but they quickly realize they have no other options. The fighter tries to pressure the cleric into leading the charge, arguing that they cannot just go around the beast. Cariel steps up and asks to fight the monster himself, which shocks the group since a guide's only job is to point out weaknesses. The cleric asks the fighter if he is just too scared to fight it, which he flusteredly denies, claiming he just wants to see what the guide can do. Guides are the lowest rank and completely unwanted in combat, but Cariel has a specific reason for taking this risk. Reina asks why he is holding a lantern, and he explains that maze rats are nocturnal and refuse to attack in bright areas. But the moment he turns the lantern off, the rat spots its prey and lunges straight for him. Cariel forces himself to stay calm as the creature closes the distance and flashes the lantern directly in its face. The light sears the rat's eyes, and as it shrieks, Cariel steps in and drives his blade into its skull. Cariel retrieves his target from the creature, declaring that he is the one who decides its fate. Reina is amazed by his use of the lantern, but Cariel laughs it off, claiming any explorer could handle a low-ranking maze rat. As he notes his own improvement, Reina shouts a warning just before another monster lunges at his back. He readies his hands, but giant jaws descend to bite him. Just as the monster attacks, a fiery explosion and a powerful punch interrupt its strike. A figure channels crackling flames to blast the creature away. Reina asks why he did not let her fight it with him, and checks if he is hurt, as Cariel reflects on his childhood friend. She complains about the dust, while he insists he just let his guard down, though he reluctantly thanks her for saving his life when she demands it. Reina watches thoughtfully as Cariel sits down in exhaustion, before asking if something is making him uneasy. Reina asks if he abandoned his dream of becoming a warrior because of what happened to him in the past. Cariel stares at his bandaged hands and admits he really did want to be a warrior. He remembers the screams of people running as the entity struck down at them. Recalling the giant eye and shark teeth from the day the monster attacked their village, he tightly clenches his fist. Cariel explains that he decided to become a guide because he was too weak to save anyone when a monster attacked his village. Elsewhere, a dark-haired woman decides she can no longer just sit back and watch. Reina leans against the wall and asks Cariel why he volunteered to fight the maze rat alone if he knew his own limits. Cariel replies that he has a goal to achieve, so he needs to become stronger instead of remaining weak. Reina looks forward with a sad expression, admitting she is tired of being useless. She suggests they resume searching for the mandrake, to which Cariel agrees since he had forgotten their objective. Knowing that rookie explorers usually form parties, Cariel suggests they go join the others. Cariel pauses at a dark tunnel to warn Reina that it leads deeper into the maze, but she dismisses her unease and tells him to move on. In Zone C, the fighter suggests they head in a different direction after sweeping their current area. He calls out to the cleric, who apologizes for getting distracted during their search. The fighter grows annoyed because he suspects she is obsessing over the guide, while she silently wonders if she should have fought the rat to prove herself. Their search halts when they spot a large mysterious chest sitting in the corridor. As the fighter prepares to open the chest, the cleric warns it might be a trap and suggests they check with the guide. Muttering bitterly about the guide, the fighter tells her to stand back because he does not need help for something this simple. The cleric questions their detour from finding the mandrake, completely unaware of a dark, shadowy figure looming directly above them. Back in Zone B, Cariel sniffs a plant and explains to Reina that the mandrake's distinct soil scent will lead them right to it. Wanting to help, Reina casts a sensory spell on Cariel to boost his sense of smell and speed up their search. She admits she felt bad just standing by earlier, confident that whoever caused this mess will soon beg for mercy, while Cariel points toward the mandrake's scent. A mandrake sprouts from the ground, and Reina examines it, wondering why Cariel is just standing there when they already have what they came for. Cariel picks up a faint scent and tracks it deeper into the root-filled maze, recognizing the vile smell. Finding him unusually quiet, Reina tries to make conversation by mentioning the royal court's recent crackdown on bandits. She explains that a warrior was sent to hunt down the ones who escaped. She adds that merchants have been going missing near this very maze, though Cariel claims that is news to him. She speculates the surviving bandits are hiding in the maze and killing the merchants. Seeing his visible fear, she assumes he is terrified of running into criminals. She teases that she might protect him if he asks nicely, but he interrupts to say something smells. Shocked, Reina defensively insists she washed up that morning. Cariel stares in horror and tells Reina that he smells dead bodies. They rush down the tunnel to where the stench is strongest and peek over a dark rocky ledge. Below them, in the pouring rain, they discover the missing merchants' bodies floating in the dark water. Later, Cariel scrapes at a wall with his sword, while Reina suggests they stop lingering and go look for the mandrake. She feels nervous, wondering why his tone has suddenly changed so much. Cariel secretly reflects that he cannot simply confess to being the one responsible. He suddenly announces he got it, startling her. He forces open a mechanism, ignoring Reina's panicked warning to stop. After a tense silence, he triumphantly secures the item. He boasts that it was a piece of cake, but Reina quickly points out he is sweating profusely. Cariel concludes that whoever caused the incident has no intention of showing themselves. Surprised by how big the place is, Reina looks up at the stone structure and wonders if there is another room inside. Cariel excitedly suggests they check out their loot. Cariel hears a noise and asks Simon if he heard it, but Simon only wobbles in response. A masked figure demands an answer, grabbing Simon's clothes as he continues to wobble. A young man decides to go speak with her, but a dark-skinned character suddenly collapses from an arrow strike. Knowing it is too dangerous to be separated, Cariel dashes off to find the fighter and the cleric, realizing there are other people in the maze. He realizes the victim was hit by a poisoned arrow without triggering a trap, so he tries to cure him quickly as a shadowy figure approaches. A young woman expresses concern over rumors about the crown prince while the beating continues. The masked figure grips Cariel's face, telling him to curse his own luck because they arrived on the exact day his group was set to disappear and orders him to die quickly. A woman tells her allies to get lost, and the masked man clenches his teeth before attacking Cariel again. Cariel lunges forward with sudden speed, surprising the masked man, and drives a downward smash into him. The attacker coughs up blood and curses, but Cariel grabs him from behind and locks him in a tight chokehold. Reina channels her magical power and casts Magic Bullet, engulfing the target in a bright vertical beam of light. As three characters fall through the dark void, Cariel looks up in shock. He uses his abilities on an unconscious person, admitting he can only stop the bleeding. Realizing the fighter and cleric have been poisoned, the group knows they need to escape. Reina offers to use magic to transport one of them, but the bandit leader smiles and warns them that his stronger comrades will arrive soon. Cariel yells at the bandit to stop trying to sound so ominous. He clenches his teeth in frustration, knowing they must take the injured with them or they will die. But looking at his own hands, Cariel questions how he is supposed to save anyone when he is only a guide. Suddenly, a voice begs for help, and hands cover Cariel's eyes from behind. Cariel recognizes his mother's voice, who shields his eyes and tells him that looking will only hurt him. A laugh echoes as Cariel's mother asks if he has already forgotten how he left a child to die the day the monsters attacked. Cariel denies it, but his mother mocks his weak, bony arms, reminding him that he is not a warrior and has no power to save anyone. Cariel spirals into shock as a voice warns him to look away. He tells himself he is completely useless because he is too weak to be a warrior and save anyone. He jolts when Reina shouts for Cariel, demanding he snap out of his daze. He forces himself to stop dwelling on his past fear of losing people so he can focus on surviving. He apologizes for worrying her and vows to find a way to get everyone out alive. He knows they are at a severe disadvantage because they are trapped in a maze with injured members against experienced bandits. Realizing the maze itself can be used to their advantage, he confirms a plan. He calls Reina's name and tells her she must do exactly as he says if she wants him to get them out. Elsewhere, a group of bandits hurries to vacate the maze today because the warrior who injured their boss is hunting them. They encounter Cariel and quickly realize he is not the warrior pursuing them. Seeing he has their stolen gems, one bandit flies into a rage and vows to kill him for the theft. The hooded leader offers safe passage in exchange for the bag, claiming they are in a hurry and want to avoid trouble. Cariel knows they are lying because murderers never leave witnesses behind, making a clash inevitable. He checks his level 1 status window to confirm his limits before making his move. He silently tosses the sack of gems over to the bandits. The leader smiles at his compliance, but immediately declares they must kill him anyway because he saw their faces. Cariel strikes first to gain the upper hand, catching the hooded man off guard. He unleashes an explosion and anxiously waits to see if it works. A claw sweeps through the smoke as the hooded man dismisses the move as a cheap trick and promises to make Cariel suffer. Seeing his attack fail, Cariel realizes he has to switch to his backup plan. As the bandits charge, he notes that his first strike at least managed to tire them out. The hooded leader warns his men that Cariel has an ally hiding nearby, so Cariel uses their hesitation to sprint forward. His anxiety makes him stumble, but he forces himself up because he just needs to reach the exit. He pushes through the pain, while the hooded leader curses his own men and orders them out of his way to chase him. The leader readies a fire spell and threatens to burn him to a crisp, leaving Cariel trapped with no room to dodge. Just then, Reina slams her hands onto the ground and channels her magic to intervene. The leader tells the mage she is getting on his nerves, but stops when he realizes her attack was not aimed at him. A rot formation erupts from the ground, blocking the exit so nobody can escape. Cariel admits he is confused by the changing battlefield, but decides he must settle everything right here since they are trapped. The bandit leader laughs, mocking Cariel for trying to sacrifice himself just to save his friends. He boasts that he could easily destroy the wall blocking them, but he wants to kill Minhwa first. Cariel ignores the taunt and decides that won't do. He tells Reina his plan to secure the fighter and cleric, then fight the bandits or lure them to Zone C. Reina is furious, realizing he wants her to escape while he acts as bait, but he insists it is part of the plan. He tells her the most important part is for her to use her sensory spell to dampen his hearing. Reina watches in horror as Cariel grabs the mandrake. He begins to uproot it, fully aware that the monster screams the moment it leaves the ground. The masked bandits freeze in disbelief, knowing the scream induces intense nausea and hallucinations. Realizing it can even cause death, they panic and yell for everyone to cover their ears. With Reina's magic sigil protecting his hearing, Cariel yanks the beast-like root free and swings it. The mandrake unleashes a piercing shriek, crippling the bandits with its deafening sound. Amidst the chaos, Cariel checks an orb to see if the system is still active. Elsewhere, an armored tracker follows their scent and realizes they are getting close. Back in the cavern, a dazed bandit wobbles to his feet, confident Cariel is too injured to fight. But before he can react, Cariel vanishes into the shadows and drives a punch into his face. A warning rings out as the hooded enemy takes a sudden hit to the face. Because a mandrake scream tests magical resistance, Cariel decides he has to take out their mage first, before bringing down the rest. The hooded man panics upon realizing he left his weapons in the maze, giving Cariel the opening to dash in and land a punch. Cariel demands to know where the other one is, but a brute leaps in to stop him. The bald man refuses to answer and swings a heavy fist, slamming his opponent hard into the ground. When the masked fighter tries to strike back, Cariel pierces his hand into the man's flesh. Bleeding heavily, Cariel vows to eliminate his target even if it means losing everything. During a struggle on the ground, his eye is crushed and he slumps over unconscious. Suddenly snapping back to reality as they rush through the dark tunnels, the group breathes a sigh of relief that their reckless plan actually worked. Reina smugly points out that he could not have done it without her, so Cariel readily credits her skills as a mage. He thanks Reina for agreeing to such a dangerous strategy, leaving her flustered as she admits he fought just like a true warrior. Cariel gives her a gentle smile and promises they will catch up properly once they escape this maze. Cariel spots the exit, but an explosion suddenly tears through the tunnel. A muscular, hooded figure steps into the light. The stranger grins and dashes straight toward them. A companion screams for Reina to turn back as an object flies through the air toward her. Before anyone can react, a deafening blast engulfs them. He coughs in the smoke, realizing the attacker used a mana stone bomb, and must be the bandit leader. He hopes the fighter and cleric survived, and worries for Reina because she exhausted her mana to protect him. As he tries to stand, a swift blow knocks him down, and a notification announces he has finished a tutorial. The bandit leader looks down at him, calling him a useless guide and a waste of time. The boss turns away to hunt down the mage, ignoring his desperate pleas to stop. He demands the man stay, but he is too exhausted to keep his eyes open as the figure vanishes into the mist. He reflects on his own weakness, wondering if his drive to save people comes from his nature, a desire for praise, or his idolization of warriors. Curled up on the floor, he admits he does not even know what he wants anymore. A voice reminds him of his goal to become a warrior to help people, leaving Reina shocked. Cariel sits in the dark, asking Reina if it even matters. He laments that no matter how hard he trains, he will only ever be a guide, and never as powerful as a mage like her. He remembers her boasting about her talent. Cariel reflects that despite training hard to learn about monsters, he still could not save anyone, concluding his mother was right that fighting is a warrior's job. A mysterious voice asks if he feels lost, and he admits he is done trying because he cannot help anyone. A short-haired girl tells him he cannot ignore those in danger. He insists he can now, asking what makes her say that. She tells him it is easy, and that he just needs to look at himself. He snaps back to reality in shock, as a sudden movement interrupts him. The bandit leader grabs his clothes, growling as he demands to know the meaning of this. Kneeling on the ground, Cariel finally realizes what she meant. The bandit leader delivers a kick to him. As Cariel reaches out from the ground, the bandit leader walks away, dismissing him as a gnat he has no time for. Cariel wobbles as he struggles to stand. The muscular bandit leader turns his scarred back, telling him to stay down and know his place. A dark wound on Cariel's bandaged torso hisses. Cariel mentally thanks Reina for helping him think straight, finally realizing what matters most to him. Elsewhere, the bandit leader finds Reina in a tunnel and grabs the mage by her hair. He presses his bleeding neck and declares he always makes sure to kill mages. He stands over her defeated body so she cannot come back to bite him later. As a mysterious object glows, the bleeding Reina weakly whispers Cariel's name. The bandit leader looms over her as she calls out for Cariel again. He grins and taunts her that Cariel is not coming to save her anytime soon. He lifts his foot, preparing to strike. Suddenly, a powerful punch slams into the bandit leader. Shocked and enraged, the bandit leader retaliates. A rapid exchange of blows ensues, ending with the bandit leader groaning in pain as he is knocked back. The bandit leader reacts to the strike on his injury, warning Cariel he should have stayed down. The man clenches his teeth and tells the guy to wait his turn so he can finish him. He laughs at Cariel's determination, asking if he ever gives up. Cariel clutches his chest as a light glows within it, deciding he is done making excuses for his actions. He lifts ahead and declares he wants to save people, choosing this path of his own will. The bandit leader notices the holy power and realizes Cariel is no normal guide, but tells him he is still completely useless. Cariel knows the man is right because Reina is unconscious, and fighter and cleric are injured, but he clenches his fist, hoping to buy time until a warrior arrives. He dashes toward the bandit leader in a sudden burst of speed. The bandit leader blocks the attack with ease and strikes Cariel in the face. He calls the attack a cheap trick, while Cariel realizes his punches are not enough to keep the man occupied since his knife is broken in his bag. Cariel throws a punch at the man's injury, but the bandit leader catches his hand. A status window warns Cariel that his magical control is extremely low and his output is unstable. The bandit leader lands a heavy blow, sending Cariel reeling backward. As Cariel groans in pain, the man asks if he got his hopes up over one lucky punch. Cariel forces himself to stay on his feet and lunges forward again. The bandit leader scoffs, calling him the biggest fool he has ever seen as Cariel struggles. He wipes his mouth, admitting he thought Cariel had another trick, but now sees he is just wasting time. Exhausted, Cariel grips the man's arm, trying to tell him to stop. The bandit leader laughs, asking if he expects a warrior to swoop in and grabs him by the jaw. The bandit leader strikes Cariel and grabs him by the throat, changing his mind about sparing him. He decides to kill him right now because the guide has proven to be a nuisance. Cariel struggles to breathe, desperate to hold on until help arrives. He apologizes to Reina for failing her. He grips his weapon, remembering a girl standing before the sealed gate to the demon realm. He reflects on his past desire to save everyone, just like the warriors he dreamed of becoming. Exhausted and battered, Cariel looks up as a figure stands before him, making his heart race. The bandit leader grabs his opponent, but a sudden noise makes Minhound stare in disbelief. Minhound flinches in pain, shocked by the sudden intervention. The bandit leader curses, regretting that he let the guide distract him. He asks why a warrior is wasting time on him instead of hunting the demon lord. The warrior steps forward and announces that the demon lord is already dead, making the bandits the new pests to exterminate. The bandit leader expresses satisfaction and lunges forward to kill his pursuer. The warrior instantly drives a punch into his stomach. The bandit screams about a curse before collapsing into the water. The warrior offers to take Minhyan to the temple because his injuries are severe. Minhyan tells him not to worry. Cariel tells the warrior to help the others lying on the ground because they need it more, before slumping over. The armored warrior catches him and notes that he is completely unconscious. Cariel suddenly jolts awake, disoriented and unsure of where he is. He finds himself in a small village temple, surprised by how light his body feels. The masked warrior informs him that he has been out for 3 days, and confirms she is the one who saved them. She explains that the temple clerics fully healed him, and Cariel is relieved to hear his party is resting safely next door. The warrior officially introduces herself as Aquila, an investigator for the royal court. She warns that despite the peaceful era, bizarre monsters and mysterious organizations are emerging from the shadows. Cariel realizes this is happening because the demon lord is gone, and Aquila agrees they are trying to fill the void. Aquila explains that thanks to his improvisation with the mandrake, she was able to capture the bandit leader and all his men. Because her future cases will require more than brute strength, she asks Cariel to be her guide. Flustered by the unexpected invitation, Cariel asks where they would be going. Aquila tells him they are heading to the forest of golems. He listens as she starts to speak. Aquila starts to mention his childhood, but Reina opens the door, apologizes for eavesdropping, and asks to tag along. Sometime later, Cariel insists he will be fine traveling with the warrior, but Reina argues he needs her to watch his back so he doesn't die in a ditch. She ignores his reminder that he never promised to travel with her, suggesting she can take a leave of absence from school because a mage is always useful. Clenching her fists, Reina shouts for him to take her along. He listens to her loud demands. Stepping out into a vast rocky cavern, he recalls how he and Reina ultimately joined the warrior's journey. Arriving at the Forest of Golems, Cariel reflects that he agreed to travel with Aquila because the warrior's proposal offered a glimmer of hope for an impossible goal. He hopes to grow stronger on this journey to finally get his revenge on the monster, a thought broken when Aquila calls his name. As they prepare to depart, Cariel asks Reina why she is smiling under her mask, leaving her flustered. Reina admits she hopes to see adorable golems like the one she made in class, but Cariel warns her not to get her hopes up. As they brave the rushing winds of the cavern, memories surface of a woman lamenting her weakness, and a man questioning her kindness. Walking deeper into the quarry, Reina asks why the golems are missing, and Cariel explains they are only on a worker's path. He tells her that the golems here form naturally from mana stones rather than a mage's power, which is why the mine is called the Forest of Golems. Cariel asks Aquila why they came here, and the warrior reveals a mysterious organization has established a base in the area. Aquila notes the suspects wear white masks, hooded cloaks, and carry sacks, causing Reina to jolt as she realizes she perfectly matches that description. Reina turns just as an armored figure looms over them, declaring they have been found. Minhyun tells him he would never have been able to handle the situation. The masked bandit sprints away, panicking because he realizes he is being followed. He flinches at a tap, then uses a falling rock to reach a ledge. A man in goggles smirks and tells them they have not cornered him yet. Minhyun thinks the line sounds familiar as a hooded figure confronts the masked man. A golem erupts from the ground and crashes onto the ledge. The masked man admits he lured them here, and Minhyun finally understands the trap. Minhyun reaches toward the core, while Cariel reassures the group that natural golems never attack unprovoked. Minhyun realizes the creature is far stronger than expected, staring in shock as it raises a hand. The golem clenches its fist, and the hooded figure stares up in horror. Reina screams at Cariel because he promised the creature would not attack them. They sprint for their lives to escape the charging golem. Reina yells for them to wait as the golem steps heavily onto the path. Coughing through the dust, Minhyun asks Cariel to explain because he realizes someone must be controlling the golem from inside its core. He decides he has to divert the enemy's attention, first to create an opening. Inside the core, a subordinate reports the right arm is blocked, so the masked leader orders a left-handed attack and wonders if the royal court sent these intruders. Minhyun widens his eyes in surprise before quickly brushing it off. The golem towers over the cavern while the hooded figure watches the masked warrior prepare for the next clash. A masked figure wonders if this is the person who blocked the golem's arm, so a hooded leader orders his men to aim for the one standing on it just before Reina warns them the enemy is attacking again. Minhyun realizes charging the golem head-on is unwise after their previous clash, so he decides to approach it another way. He dashes away to avoid a fist and sprints past the entity to reposition himself. He pushes himself to move even faster. An armored warrior watches him rush past, demanding to know who he is and why he is doing this. Minhyun skids and slides across the rocky slope, leaving Cariel and Reina gasping in shock at his speed. The two masked figures watch in silence until one panics, because Minhyun is charging straight up the goleman's arm. But the golemancer refuses to fight him directly, because his profession means he never has to get his hands dirty. The hooded figures hesitate as explosions rock the cavern, leaving two mechanical constructs to block the path. He turns to Reina to discuss their next move. Minhyun tells Reina they need to go after the man who ran from them, realizing that this chase is exactly what he dreamed of as a child. The group runs across the sloped terrain, dodging energy beams as the creature's helmet powers up to stop their advance. The armored golem rushes in, making Reina stammer in shock as a masked figure dashes toward them. Minhyun decides he must act to protect her, drawing his sword and piercing the creature as it attacks. He charges the armored opponent to end the threat. The armored figure lands on the ground before him. The enemy's helmet cracks, so he swings his arm and grabs the creature by the head. He charges forward and braces his feet as the creature emits a hiss of energy. The masked men watch in horror because he just destroyed their top-tier golem, forcing the leader to debate whether to run before he loses sight of his target. The leader searches the area, turning around just as the silhouette moves rapidly past them. An eye stares from the darkness while Cariel reflects on his past actions, emerging from the wall to tell the bandit he found his hiding spot. The bandit insists he only delivers items to survive, but Cariel demands to look in his bag and asks Reina to bind his legs so he cannot escape. Reina admits she cannot cast 2 spells at once, so Cariel offers to carry her on his back, prompting her to stammer before deciding she has a better plan. The masked bandit pauses to catch his breath, thinking he escaped, but Cariel leaps straight at him with intense focus. Moving with a speed unseen since the calamity of the moon, Cariel lunges forward, leaving the bandit paralyzed with terror just before they crash into the ground. The 2 fighters skid across the ground, and Cariel winces, saying he did not mean to hit that hard. He lands a kick and moves his bandaged arm, prompting the bandit to shout that guides are not supposed to fly. Cariel slams him down, but the injured man yells that he does not know anything. Cariel slams the man's face into the floor to shut him up, then secures the bag. In the ruin room, Cariel apologizes for throwing Reina too hard, complaining his shoulder hurts. Reina slumps, insisting she would never hurt him on purpose. Cariel grabs her hand to see what is wrong, and she admits she hurt it pushing too hard in the maze. He realizes it looks like a burn, which explains why she struggled with the levitation spell, and he admits he has been too self-absorbed. He notices holy power on her hand, but she reassures him the temple priests already helped her, which he admits is better than nothing. He apologizes for joking earlier because she only pushed herself to save him, and she thanks him for looking out for her. They suddenly notice the bandit is awake, and the man groans that he has been listening for a while, but they were too busy flirting to notice. Cariel demands to know what the item in the bag is for, but the bandit insists for the 3rd time that he does not know. Elsewhere, an armored figure cries out in pain, leaving a young man confused by the steaming helmet. Sometime earlier, Cariel explains he found the enemy behind a magic circle, but they cannot force their way in without risking the enemy's lives and losing information, so he asked Reina how to disable it. Reina does not know, but Cariel looks around the workers' warehouse and spots bags of flour. He remembers Reina explaining that magic generates heat, and he realizes he can use the flour to stop the enemies from casting. Back at the cave, the hooded enemies face another attack and assume Cariel is trying to blind them with smoke. As they prepare a barrier, they realize they are covered in flour, and Cariel warns them that using magic will blow them all up. The enemy praises his skills as a novice, while Cariel explains that heat combined with fine dust triggers an explosion, and mana is heat. The masked figure challenges them to continue the fight if they dare. A subordinate asks if they should hold out for backup, but the bearded leader surrenders. Elsewhere, an armored figure declares that it is finally time to act. A heavy figure crushes the ground beneath his foot, leading a cloaked companion along the cliffs. A hooded pursuer notes the Golmancers are gone, but he walks on and vows to stay 2 steps ahead. A young man sheds frustrated tears. Meanwhile, Cariel rides in a wagon, assuring his companions that he trusts them. With Reina sleeping on his shoulder, he feels relieved that the Golmancers surrendered before anyone got hurt. He remembers Aquila interrogating the captive about the root used to corrupt the golem cores. After the prisoner confirms the cores can be purified with holy power, Aquila sends them to the temple for questioning. Cariel tries to take a nap because he assumes the danger is over, but the carriage abruptly jolts to a halt. A fighter steps up to the wagon and orders them to surrender to his bandit crew if they want to live. The guards panic because they realize the bandits have brought a knight to the ambush. The bandit steps forward to assert his dominance, but one of the captors reveals they have taken hostages. He warns them that the hostages will die if they try anything funny. Cariel asks what they should do, and the masked figure advises against provoking the bandits because his friend has just arrived. Dark tendrils rise around a bald bandit as a spectral presence looms over him, forcing him to stay perfectly still. The bandit leader grabs a captive and orders his men to kill them, but the hooded figure instantly slashes him across the face. Another bandit yells about the hostages, so the hooded figure stabs him before he can finish his threat. A gag girl trembles in fear until Aquila approaches to tell her she is safe. The girl thanks the armored warrior as Aquila gently pats her head. Reina winces and covers her mouth because the smell of blood from the fallen bodies is overwhelming. Ram watches the carnage and decides that if they cannot save people in the future, he will have to kill the threats himself. He tells Cariel to get back in the carriage to avoid the gruesome sight. Cariel agrees but wonders where Aquila and the other warrior have gone. Nearby, the rescued woman and child bow respectfully to Aquila to show their gratitude. A hooded figure approaches and apologizes for not introducing himself earlier, revealing his name is Warrior Ram, bearer of the title Shadow. Ram explains that Aquila helped him become a warrior, while Reina introduces herself as a mage and Cariel as a guide. Cariel realizes he has already encountered 2 warriors on his journey. Reina scratches her head in confusion and asks Cariel why there are multiple warriors. Ram confirms this, noting his title is Shadow because he excels in assassination rather than head-on combat. When asked about her title, Aquila reveals she is the pursuer because of her heightened senses and physical abilities. Aquila explains that other warriors hold titles like Berserker and Arbiter. Reina clutches her head, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of information. Aquella clarifies that titled warriors and the Holy Sword warrior are fundamentally the same, though the public only focuses on the latter because they slay the demon lord, a point Reina eagerly agrees with. Aquella tells Cariel he might meet the warriors soon, making the boy blush in surprise, which Reina quickly notices. Aquella adds that all warriors must gather for the Holy Sword's retrieval, causing Reina to panic as she realizes the sword only appears when a new demon lord is born. Aquella tries to pass her slip-up off as a joke, but Rand tells her to stop. Aquella assures Cariel there is no need to worry about the demon lord, because the previous one is already dead. Cariel admits he is confused, but resolves to focus on what lies ahead. Sometime later, they arrive by wagon, and Aquella explains they are investigating a series of disappearances in the forest. The dark woods are perfectly suited for Ram's abilities, though Cariel questions how people could go missing among such tall trees. Aquella leads the group toward the village that requested their help, and Reina calls out to Cariel to keep up. Cariel asks her if a monster is responsible, pointing out that they have only encountered human enemies like robbers and necromancers so far. Reina tells him it does not matter as long as they solve the case, reminding him that they only caught the necromancers because of his help. As he walks, Cariel feels uneasy, trying to convince himself that in such a dark forest, the culprit has to be a monster. He stops in his tracks and says no, as he hopes his fears are wrong. He continues walking through the dark forest. The group arrives at the desolate village and spots the locals gathered together in the gloom. A man in the crowd approaches them, gripping their hand to thank them for coming all this way. Meanwhile, back at the village, Reina decides to interview a few locals, and Cariel agrees to gather them. Aquella and Ram ask the first villager for an introduction, and Nora explains that her son went missing. Cariel asks what she means, and Nora confirms her son went missing in the forest 2 days ago. She recounts walking through the woods 3 days ago, holding John's hand tightly because of the recent disappearances. She insists she was holding on to him, but then he suddenly vanished. Ram asks if the boy disappeared right before her eyes, but Nora explains she lost consciousness after hearing a strange noise. Cariel asks what it sounded like, and she describes it as a monster song. Cariel notes that Nora surviving the encounter is a huge variable, shocking the others. Reina then asks Mark to share what he knows, and he prepares to describe his search for the missing villagers. She demands to know what he saw, and Mark recalls spotting a snake's tail and chicken's feet. Mark regrets not acting sooner as the group finishes cross-checking the testimonies to identify the creature. They announce their conclusions simultaneously, with Cariel naming a basilisk while Reina guesses a siren. Cariel tells her to let the guide handle it, but Reina argues she knows more about monsters because of her academy classes. Ram intervenes to keep the peace, insisting the monster's exact species does not matter. Reina agrees to drop it so they can rest for tomorrow's hunt, though she regrets ending the night on an argument. The next morning, Reina complains of a stuffy nose, and Cariel asks her she is feeling alright. He asks if she is worried about the monster not being a siren, but she blames her condition on a lack of sleep. Cariel admits he stayed up analyzing the case, relieved to conclude a human could not have done this. They meet Aquella and Ram, hoping they did not keep the warriors waiting. Ram reminds them their goal is to rescue the child and kill the monster, and the four head into the dark forest. Cariel decides to pair with Reina to prioritize investigation over combat, so they split the group to cover more ground. After marking the searched walls, they catch a faint scent of blood, but they decide to track the smell of water to locate the lake first. Detecting water far in the distance, Ram decides to investigate the area personally. Because Ram has the ability to interact with shadows, he travels directly through them to reach the destination faster. He knows a siren requires a lake, but he is shocked to discover the water source has completely dried up. Elsewhere, Reina and Cariel are exhausted after hours of fruitless searching until they realize there is one location they have not checked yet. They look up to see intertwining branches forming a new layer of the forest, which explains the darkness and the basilisk claw marks on the trunk. When Cariel asks who will climb up, he and Reina stare at each other before she leaps into the air. She climbs through the dark opening to see what is inside, calling down that she is fine despite being a bit scared. While Cariel worries about the volatile border situation below, Reina wobbles in the dark, doubting she will actually find anything here. She struggles to lift a heavy mass, so she counts to 3 to coordinate her final push. Finding only a solitary figure sitting in the shadows, Reina kneels on the ground in shock and confusion. She feels cut off from the forest because the academy curfew means she is not used to being outside in the dark, and she swallows in fear. Reina uses a small light to navigate the shadows so she remains hidden. She senses a presence and begins to panic, wondering why her heartbeat sounds so loud. Her anxiety makes her hyper-aware of her movements, but she relies on her nose to navigate. She detects a vile smell she has grown used to and resolves to save the people in danger. She discovers a dead body and stares in disbelief, realizing her stuffy nose hid the scent. A sudden creak makes her realize she needs to escape, trembling as she tries to reach the ground. She moves forward until her foot catches on something, making her freeze to inspect it. Crouching in the dark, she recognizes the object and knows that this is not just a simple loss of control. She uncovers a screaming monster head and collapses to the ground in terror. She begs her racing heart to stop beating so the enemy will not hear her. She stays curled in a ball for a long time until she finally catches her breath and feels calmer. Reina reluctantly agrees, but urges them to leave, noting she can still hear her heart beating. A woman hesitates as a dark creature emerges from the shadows. She plans to cast a defensive spell to escape. The protagonist dashes forward and leaps into the night, resolving to get the evidence he needs. He waits impatiently, wondering what is taking her so long. Noting the enemy is stronger than he thought, he walks alone through a dark passage. Waiting below, Cariel wonders why Reina is taking 10 minutes for a quick look. Looking up as he hears a strange sound. Hearing an explosion, two hooded figures decide they need to find Cariel, who huddles in a swirling vortex. Cariel looks up in shock as Reina falls from the canopy. He sprints forward so she does not hit the ground. He catches her in his arms and calls her name. Bloodied and panting, Reina mutters about the monster, leaving Cariel panicked about what happened above. He carries her away so she can rest instead of talking. The group discusses Reina's injuries, noting she escaped by breaking through branches with a spell after a monster caught her. The armored warrior concludes the basilisk wanted to store her under a hallucination because it did not eat her. Cariel agrees to head up to the canopy to find the missing child, while elsewhere, a cloaked figure calls out to him. Minhyun groans in bed, but then nods and promises he will not do it. Later, the group discusses basilisks to prepare for their descent, noting that these specific monsters use hallucinations, so they must avoid eye contact. Cariel explains that a guide's role is to analyze and reconstruct monsters to minimize variables, making them excellent partners for mages. Cariel taps the wall to find a deeper layer to the forest, just as Aquella and her companions arrive, because the monster scent is stronger there. Ram tells Cariel the upcoming threat is a mix of chicken and snake, shocking the boy as the three cloaked figures advance. Cariel shouts a warning as the basilisk suddenly lunges to bite them. Cariel realizes it is an upper-ranking monster, but his body freezes because its speed and size remind him of a traumatic monster from his childhood. The creature rushes him, so someone grabs Cariel and shoves him out of the way. Aquella slashes the chimera and crushes it to protect the group. She tells Cariel to leave the combat to them, so he thanks her for the save. As more creatures approach, Ram orders Cariel to dash off to find the missing child. Desperate to make himself useful, Cariel assesses the situation so he can join the search. Just as another claw swipes past, Aquella crashes into the creature and calls out to Ram. Ram insists he is fine despite his creaking movements, so Cariel dashes away, remembering the advice to avoid eye contact. Before he can escape, a fist slams into his face, splattering his blood. Cariel realizes the creature is missing its tail, but he remains certain it is a basilisk. The hooded warrior clashes with the winged beast and lands a strike. Minhyun stares in shock as the monster's wounds knit back together because basilisks cannot heal themselves. He deduces that even regenerating monsters have a fatal weakness, so he shouts for the warriors to aim for the heart. The masked figure and armored warrior launch a relentless assault, swinging their blades to tear into the beast. The monster screeches as it takes a blow and crashes to the ground. The helmeted warrior assumes the fight is over, but freezes in absolute disbelief as a human cry echoes from the wreckage. From within the monster's ruined body, a pale winged figure emerges, staring up at them in distress. As Minhyun braces himself, the lingering threats loom before him in the darkness. Minhyun resolves to face the situation because running away is no longer an option. Ran crackles with energy, and Minhyun realizes he can still move. Eyes emerge from the dark to reveal a giant chicken. Reina stares in shock, and they scream in terror as a winged siren appears. The siren begins to sing, and Minhyun feels the hypnotic melody drawing him in. With his eardrums blown, Minhyun ignores the dripping blood, deciding to fix his hearing later so he can keep fighting. The beast snaps its jaws shut, forcing the masked warrior to move quickly. Minhyun slides across the ground to check if Ram is alright. He resolves to keep moving forward even if he has to crawl, because they need to escape the shrieking monster. Minhyun searches for Ram and spots him just as an armored hand snatches the hooded warrior to safety. Save for the moment, Ram thanks them for saving his life and confirms Aquella healed his ears with holy power. Ram explains that fighting a siren's song and a basilisk's hallucinations is their biggest problem, so they must target the creature's heart to stop its regeneration. But they need to figure out which creature serves as the chimera's core. Minhyun struggles to find a solution, reasoning that there must be an obvious answer because the golem incident was not supposed to happen. Someone asks Carol whether the chimera's main form is the siren or the basilisk. Someone asks Cariel which creature is the main form, but Cariel nods and cuts straight to the chase because they have no time to explain. The armored warrior steps forward, noting that while the deep night suits monsters, warriors who wear this armor also feel at home in the darkness. As the monster lunges, Minhyun worries the guild master will be very upset, while the masked fighter swoops in to counter. The creature screeches and attacks, leaving Minhyun conflicted about whether he should be happy or sad. He realizes what is happening just as a woman screams when chaotic energy suddenly erupts around her. The cloaked figure dashes forward to land heavy blows, while Minhyun insists he is not trying to be a hero. The masked figure lingers in the shadows thinking he secured his prize until a sudden noise catches him by surprise. A hand gripes his clothing, and the masked figure chokes out a question as an unseen force squeezes him, because things have gone too far. A creature screams in the darkness as a sudden attack sweeps through the area. An armored warrior dodges the strike to reposition and grips his sword. Minhyun receives a system prompt for a new skill and asks what is going on, while a mysterious figure demands Cario reveal whether the chimera's true form is a siren or a basilisk. Another heavy blow strikes the creature down, making an onlooker jolt in sudden surprise. A metal-gloved hand scrapes the ground as someone steps forward and Reina softly volunteers to handle the rest. Meanwhile, Minhyun enters a cave where monsters store their prey to track down the missing child, but he stops when he finds several motionless bodies. He spots John bruised on the ground and steps forward to grab him, but a monster blocks his path. Minhyun stares in shock, calculating that the boy is only 10 steps away. He lunges forward to close the distance, and the creature snaps its jaws at him as he dashes past. He grits his teeth and sprints away from the creature, because he needs to think of another way. He spots a vulnerable mark on the monster's face, just as the beast crouches to dash at him. They grapple in close combat before a beast stomps forward carrying a rider on its head. A sudden twist of a dark limb catches him off guard, so he loses his footing and slides back in shock. He plunges into the dark space, hoping his friends are safe somewhere as he reaches out to grab the shadowy substance. He curses in frustration because he has to pull his ally up, ripping their shirt and tugging with all his might. He realizes he is getting used to this dark energy as he grips a twisted branch to anchor himself. He reaches upward in despair because they are about to fall into the abyss. An armored hand suddenly grabs them, and a dark, masked figure asks Cariel if he is alright. The case is finally closed because they safely rescued the missing child. Though Reina touches the sleeping Cariel's face and notes he would be awake if she had cast a spell on him before he left. A hooded figure stands over him and apologizes to Cariel for the ordeal. Later, Nora greets warrior Ram in the hallway to invite him to a feast the villagers prepared to show their gratitude. Ram begins fading into the darkness, claiming it is just a force of habit because shadows grow darker the closer they are to light. Nora tells him to make sure he brings the guide along too. From the darkness, a voice calls out Ram's name. Ram asks for the results from the monsters' bodies, but Aquila wants to discuss the broader implications of the case. Aquila explains that the substance merging the chimera matches the golem corruption, leading them to conclude the same organization is behind both. The conversation shifts to how a demon lord and the holy sword usually appear every 100 years, until warrior Persian slayed 2 demon lords in a row. With the kills happening 30 and 10 years ago, they realize something must have occurred to disrupt the cycle. Meanwhile, the warriors continue to discuss the broken pattern. Back with the warriors, they deduce that because the Arbiter broke the pattern, a new demon lord or holy sword could appear at any moment. Though it is only speculation, they are certain that retrieving the holy sword this time will be an unprecedented challenge. Meanwhile, at the royal palace in Vinate, Perseun, the previous warrior of the holy sword, prepares to set out. Later, Ram checks on Cariel, who humbly admits they could not have defeated the monster without the warriors' help. After sharing a laugh, Ran asks Cariel if they can chat for a moment. Later, at a nearby eatery, Ram sits down with Cariel to ask a question that has been on his mind. He wants to know why Cariel ordered them to target the basilisk instead of the siren. Cariel explains that since a siren breathes through gills, it could never survive in a forest, and expresses relief that his simple deduction was right. Instead of a direct answer, Ram asks Cariel if he remembers how shocking their violent first encounter with the robbers was. Ram explains that while people idolize warriors, the reality is an endless cycle of killing monsters, robbers, and even other humans. He confesses that he grew terrified of going without his helmet, realizing he was nothing but a killing machine, unworthy of anyone's admiration. Because he did not want people to see the blood on his hands, Ram chose to distance himself and hide in the shadows. Ram apologizes for talking too much, leaving Cariel to realize how superficial his own admiration for warriors has been. But Cariel speaks up, telling Ram that there is a profound difference between senseless killing and killing to save others. He points out that Ram is reflecting on his darker side rather than justifying it, and reminds him that shadows grow darker the closer they are to light. Smiling, Minhwa tells the masked warrior that he was moving toward the light even as he drew closer to darkness. Ram considers that it is all a matter of perspective and allows himself to look around. Minhwa realizes his own role as he reaches out to help a child. He reminds his companion to consider both sides since they saved his life yesterday, while an observer watches them prepare to leave. After questioning the villagers, Cariel, Aquella, and Reina part ways with Ram, who stops when he hears someone crying. Ram halts his march, distressed because he thinks he left something crucial behind. The villagers express their disappointment that the warriors left before their celebration. Ram clenches his fist and clears his throat, reminding himself he became a warrior to help people. A creature screams, and Ram hesitates to investigate so he will not be late for the holy sword retrieval. He sprints into the woods anyway, because he refuses to be a warrior who only chases swords. Aquella travels to the great temple to hear the prophecy, while Cariel and Reina explore the town. They debate splitting up, and Cariel carries Reina, telling her to just rest instead of forcing herself. Reina clears her throat and dashes away to ask a shopkeeper for papers on warriors. She laughs about marrying a warrior to hide her anxiety. Minhwa pulls a file from the archives and discovers Pershing gave the holy sword to his mentee Asanya. He learns warriors receive the sword's location from the temple to return it to the royal court, confirming his suspicions. Meanwhile, Ram searches deep in the forest and considers turning back because he finds no monsters. An attacker suddenly grabs him by the throat, but Ram just taunts them for disappointing him. Ram dodges a forceful punch and exhales in relief, noting the enemy almost ripped his head off. Ram realizes this menacing creature is the Blood Knight, the other anomaly existing alongside the mysterious organization. The Blood Knight smiles, pleased to recognize his opponent as Ram. The creature launches a rapid assault, forcing Ram to block the heavy blow. Ram stares in shock as the monster swings its arm swiftly, landing a powerful strike. The Blood Knight acknowledges Ram as the Shadow and commends his tricks. Ram admits he only knows the Blood Knight targets warriors, with no other details. The monster taunts Ram about running away, prompting Ram to create distance to wait for an opening. Accepting this as a refusal to flee, the Blood Knight steps firmly and leaps forward. As a figure moves in a burst of light, a young man comforts himself that hard work will return him to a normal life. The muscular figure strains as energy pulses from his chest, leaving the dark-haired man to contemplate this revelation. The Blood Knight charges and strikes with its claw. Ram watches, stunned, as the monster's armor warps to unleash a barrage of blades, guessing the creature is accelerating its own blood circulation. Realizing that keeping his distance will only get him killed, Ram decides he has to fight head-on. The Blood Knight warns that running away is useless, because he can easily hunt other targets instead. Ram tells the monster not to worry, declaring he already decided to stop hiding in the shadows. Intrigued by this resolve, the Blood Knight challenges Ram to prove himself as a worthy trophy. Cariel realizes the nature of the strange power as the monster challenges him to be a worthy trophy. Meanwhile, Cariel is surprised when someone points out that he must really love warriors. Cariel agrees, because most people do, but the hooded figure replies that they dislike warriors. When Cariel asks why, the figure explains they simply realize reality is different from their imagination. Cariel admits he does not understand. The hooded figure points to children playing in a clearing, noting that a comfortable child becomes the center of attention while a frail child is pushed away, and asks Cariel who he would save if he could only pick one. The figure claims that while fictional warriors always find salvation, reality always leaves out who is left behind. Cariel disagrees, insisting that true warriors save everyone without discrimination, even when it causes them suffering, because those stories are real. The figure clenches his fist and dismisses it as nonsense. He reveals he overheard Cariel's conversation with the warrior yesterday, so he decides to stop talking and test Cariel's choices through action. Tendrils snatch Reina and Cariel, demands her release before the group realizes the children are the next targets. Ensnaring them, the entity forces Cariel to decide who to save and who to abandon to prove his point about reality. Cariel coughs and glares at him. Reina insists they will save both, blaming Cariel for making her sound so noble. She breaks free and casts a spell. Explosions tear through the landscape. Cariel watches the blast, contemplating how he is able to see this, and dashes forward as the cloaked figure crouches in the dust. A strange memory of a woman proposing marriage flashes in his mind just as he clashes his weapon against the enemy. Cariel realizes the woman is healing without holy power or potions, just like a basilisk. The woman swipes her hand, driving a heavy blow into him. A hooded figure looms closer, and Reina flinches at a sudden burst of light. She scrapes her boot against the ground, startled by the noise. The woman stares at the energy in her hand, leaving her victim injured on the ground. She reaches out and snatches a boy, pulling him into an embrace. Cariel shouts that she is taking the boy into the forest, but Reina stops him from chasing her. Exhausted, Reina warns him that they need a warrior to help them. Deep inside a grand corridor, a lone hooded figure walks toward an altar as a gong echoes around them. The figure stops and lowers their head in silence. A masked official tells Aquella a horse is ready for his departure, but Aquella insists on finding his companions first. Someone calls out to the warrior, announcing that it is time to leave. Reina and Cariel rush up to him, urgently reporting that a hooded woman with strange powers has kidnapped a child and fled into the woods. The masked official notes that Aquella's abilities will reduce a weeks-long pursuit to mere days, but reminds him not to forget his primary mission. Aquella stands in silence before the ruins, weighing the kidnapping against his retrieval mission to find the Holy Sword. He clenches his fist, realizing he has to make a choice. A woman promises to gather as much information as she can. Cariel pleads with Aquella for help, explaining that the kidnapper is connected to the monsters and is far too strong for them to fight alone. Staring at a strange object in his hand, Aquella clenches his fist and asks them to understand why he has to make his choice. He trails off, standing motionless in his tattered cloak. Bare feet step onto a wooden floor inside a dilapidated cabin hidden deep in the forest. The distressed boy begs his captor to let him go, but the captor promises not to hurt him. The hooded woman tells John they have a great deal in common. John adamantly denies it, admitting he is not powerful like her. She tells him he can become powerful too, as long as he pays a simple price. John hesitates, but imagines how much his friends would finally like him. He wants his teachers to praise him, which the woman calls a small price to pay. Nearby, Cariel senses a strange energy. John declares he will do whatever it takes to become powerful. Grinning, the woman tells him he just needs to become a monster, like her. John trembles as she insists that gaining monster powers will make him completely self-sufficient. He confesses he only wants power to be liked, and insists a warrior will save him if he is in danger. The woman clenches her teeth in anger and grabs his arm tight enough to hurt. She tells him the warriors he dreams of do not exist. A sudden crash interrupts them as Cariel steps toward the woman with his weapon drawn. The woman acknowledges that John was right about a warrior coming. She lunges rapidly at Cariel to attack him. Cariel strikes back with a heavy blow, stating he is only here because of her. The creature bites down on its target. The woman reflects that she will try to live for the sake of the people she hurt before dashing forward again. She lands a strike, but is shocked when her attack bounces right off his armor. As she lunges again, she realizes his armor has just morphed. Cariel lands a jarring blow to her face. The creature grins and says it finally has her. The masked figure stares as a clawed hand reaches out. The creature launches an attack. The kidnapper lands a heavy blow, casually telling him she has no real reason to live. He screams in agony, having suspected from the start that this battle would lead to endless darkness. He looks toward a distant glowing figure as a voice declares they will give up to that boy as well. The kidnapper mocks her captive, noting that their rescuer is unfortunately just a guide. She readies her weapon, surprised he actually followed them all this way, just to fight with a new sword. He remembers Aquella giving him this sword before refusing to help search for the child. In the memory, he begs for help, arguing that only a warrior like Aquella can defeat the monster. Aquella agrees he is a warrior, explaining that this is exactly why his duty is to retrieve the Holy Sword instead. He understands Aquella must choose the Holy Sword because retrieving it will save far more lives than a single child. Accepting the warrior's burden, he decides to go rescue the child himself. After he tells Reina he is going after them, she warns Cariel to keep the retrieval a secret to protect the mission. Two men watch the departure, asserting they can handle the missing child themselves. An armored figure calls Cariel to wait. The figure offers a sword, assuring Cariel it will return when called. The figure shares a prophecy about a sword appearing at the highest point to strike the offspring of the mother of monsters. He demands to know why the kidnapper took the child. She grabs her captive and claims she is simply giving the frail child a choice. He calls her a monster and asks if becoming one truly benefits the weak. She questions why her identity matters as long as she helps those cast aside. He tells her to shut up, because she is just forcing her twisted values onto the boy. She asks if she is wrong, noting that all humans have a reason for what they do. He replies that her thoughts and actions prove she is a monster. He ends the conversation to take the child back. The kidnapper calls him rude because she realizes he brought backup. An ally dashes forward to strike. A voice declares that the original will survive, so Cariel grips his sword. An ally dashes forward with magic, but the hooded figure carries the child away. The kidnapper strikes the ground, declaring she will prove that becoming a monster is not a terrible fate. Cariel steps forward, noting that the kidnapper has been fused with a plant-type monster. He tells his ally to focus on combustion magic so they can adjust their strategy. She agrees, and they launch their attack. Cariol rushes the creature, but he is thrown back before he can tighten his grip. The creature signals doom, so Minhyan dashes forward and lunges with his sword, relying on his persistence as a dungeon cleaner to push through. He takes a heavy hit and reaches out, only to realize the entity is sprouting thorns to defend itself. Reina swings her arm and unleashes a blast of energy, shouting for the monster to take the hit. She follows up with an explosion, but looks on in confusion when she sees her attack did nothing. Minhyan readies his sword, admitting that their opponent is much stronger than them. The hooded woman taunts them for being outmatched, so Reina decides to repair a stronger spell because her basic combustion magic is useless against someone who gave up their humanity. Reina wonders if the monsters somehow delayed the temple's reinforcements, because they are still fighting alone. Elsewhere, the retreating knights stop in confusion, wondering what happened to the forest and where the wall blocking their path came from. Back at the fight, Reina casts a flare to protect the missing child as the monster lunges forward. The creature emerges from the shadows unscathed, leaving Reina shocked that her intermediate combustion magic failed. Minhyan realizes the flowers sprouting on the monster are fire-resistant camellias, so he calls out to Reina to change their strategy. He tells her to use her strongest spell, and when she says she needs time to cast it, he reassures her and grips his sword to buy her that time. The kidnapper praises their resilience, but admits she is tired of the fight, darting forward to kill them. Minhyan strikes back with a swift slash, landing a solid punch on his opponent. He slashes and punches his opponent, clenching his jaw to push through the fatigue. He knows he has to keep taking the hits to buy enough time for Reina to cast her spell. The hooded kidnapper figures out his plan and rushes in, unleashing appendages that snap at him. A masked warrior steps in to block the assault, gripping his blade and straining to hold on just a little longer. The monster slams Minhyan into the ground and crushes him, mocking him for enduring hours of punishment. Minhyan warns her that it is nothing compared to what is coming, as a vortex of energy gathers above. The kidnapper realizes this attack is different and throws up her hands to block the sweeping force. Reina watches in disbelief, wondering how he ended up with that power before the monster screams. A silhouette reaches into the light to touch the core. Elsewhere, a man realizes they have been played because the person who fetched the documents must have already known everything. Meanwhile, the unnamed narrator wakes up in a void, confused to find nothing but a solitary chair. Touching it brings back memories, because it used to come here with mom and dad to watch twin sister perform. The unnamed narrator remembers finding her twin sister easily in the dark, because she only had to follow her mesmerizing voice. She watches her sister perform on stage in awe, reflecting that her twin was always different from her. Their family was poor and ordinary, but that changed when her sister started performing, allowing them to leave their shabby house for the city. Classmates gossip about how plain she is compared to her extraordinary sister, but the narrator still remembers her twin as an innocent child who loved heroic tales. One night, she overhears mom telling her sister that a nobleman has arranged a stage for her, and that she is all mom has left. The narrator realizes she had been denying her sister's talent because she feared losing her place in the family, and facing this reality changes their relationship forever. Finding a new dress put away, she tries it on because she hopes it is a surprise for her upcoming birthday. Mom furiously slaps her and yells that the dress is for her sister, demanding silence when she tries to apologize. The narrator cries and takes the blame, shocked because she has never seen mom so angry. She walks through the dark to apologize to her sister, who asks how she found out about the clothes. Her sister dismisses the incident as mom's stress. But when the narrator asks her to see a play about a warrior, her sister refuses because she has to practice. Years ago, her father hugs her and says he loves both his daughters equally. He asks if she wants to hear a tale about a warrior, and she agrees. Then strange monsters appear to attack their village. An explosive blast buries her under the rubble. She loses feeling in her legs and calls out for her father. Through the smoke, she sees him looking around the ruins. She yells louder to make sure he hears her. He sees her, but then he stops. She calls out to him again. She calls out for her father as he turns away. She trembles, trying to convince herself he would never abandon her. She sheds a tear in the darkness, promising to be a good girl so he will save her. She reaches out and begs him not to go. She clenches her teeth, terrified because she does not want to die. She cries out for anyone to help her. Back in the present, she wonders why he asked if she was the youngest. A voice admits it does not want to know the truth as a hand reaches down into the dark. Smoke blinds Cariol until he suddenly spots something in the ash. The fire crackles around him as he realizes they won the battle. He steps forward and holds up the core, because it is the reward the dungeon master promised. Nearby, a small voice begs for its father to come back. A stranger steps through the debris and notes that the creature survived the fire. The terrified survivor pleads for help, so the figure decides to take it with him and reaches out a clawed hand. Someone asks if this is a joke, but Cariel just holds the unconscious Reina and plans to take her and the kidnapped child to the temple so they can recover. A woman wonders if he will come looking for her. Suddenly, the plant monster erupts with energy, regenerating its body by feeding on the flames. The creature grits its teeth and cries out in pain as it steps forward through the fire. Cariel scoops Reina up and turns away to escape the blaze. A soldier asks if anyone is hurt, watching as their opponent is completely engulfed in flames. The men brace against the intense heat, while Minhyan spots the trapped child through the thick, suffocating smoke. He watches the knights charge into the light to confront the monster. An explosive blast catches the armored men off guard, though they manage to survive the impact. One knight is struck hard and quickly apologizes to his superior, claiming the creature's attacks are too unpredictable to dodge. The leader watches the monster unleash its energy, noting that it is merely thrashing in the throes of pain. Reina realizes her magic has failed because the enemy is regenerating too quickly and the flames refuse to die. They realize they have to retreat before the building collapses around them. But the knight commander orders a full retreat, refusing to risk his men against an unbeatable enemy just to save a child. Despite the protests, the soldiers fall into formation and abandon the collapsing building. He stares at the burning figure, realizing that all of this destruction is because of him. Coughing in the smoke, he stares at the burning figure and admits this is all his fault. As the fire rages around them, the skeletal figure remembers that he only wanted to protect the abandoned, because true warriors only exist in storybooks. Overwhelmed by the looming shadows, he grits his teeth in distress and apologizes to everyone, believing the destruction is his fault for being useless. He turns in shock as Cariel suddenly clenches his bandaged fist and sprints forward, crashing directly into the fray. Ignoring the hissing flames burning his flesh, Minhyan blasts the fire away to shield a young girl, leaving the figure stunned that someone actually ran into the inferno. Watching Minhyan step forward, the figure wonders if it is really okay to leave things like this, realizing the boy might actually save everyone. Reaching out through his agonizing memories of abandonment, he wonders if Minhyan would have saved him too if he had been there that day. Cariel extends his bandaged hand to the hooded girl, who slumps forward and admits she needs help. She takes his hand, amazed that a warrior from the storybooks has actually come to save her. The illusion shatters as Cariel grips his sword, panting heavily, and unleashes a desperate attack. He freezes in shock, staring in absolute disbelief at what he has just done. Horrified and panting for breath, Cariel struggles to process the reality of the situation. He recalls the villagers poking a hybrid child and calling it a man-eater, and how his mother ordered him not to get involved. He agrees to follow his mother's orders and walks away. He glances back, distressed by what he sees. But when he sees a child's face, he breaks his promise to his mother. He runs back and grabs the child's arm, an act that earns him hours of scolding. In the present, Reina asks Cariel how he slept, noting he seemed exhausted before they set out. He asks about her magic strain, but she says the clerics helped her recover, pointing out that he looks sad. Cariel admits he started this journey to take revenge on monsters, but the creature they just fought was looking at him for help. He explains that even as he looked at her face, he could not stop himself from swinging his blade to survive the flames. He hates that he is always pushed around without a choice, so Reina tells him he cannot blame himself. Cariel clenches his fist, remembering how she called him a warrior right before she died, which confuses him because he abandoned that dream years ago. He laments that if he had been a stronger warrior, he could have saved his village, finally admitting to Reina that he never truly gave up on his dream. He cries that his inability to become a warrior is not something he can control. Later, Cariel and Reina arrive at a stone gate to enter the Echidna maze. They have to climb the tower to meet the Mother of Monsters' gaze because Aquela's prophecy demands it. Cariel scoffs in disbelief at the tainted land ahead. He stares at the gap in the sky where the demon lord is prophesied to emerge, shocked by a sudden explosion. A man suddenly clutches his head in pain, startled by an eerie presence from the demonic realm. Elsewhere, a young woman is shocked when a man asks her about the power of the divine beast. At a restricted entryway, Reina and Cariel announce they are with warrior Aquela to retrieve the holy sword. The guards tell Reina to take her little boyfriend and leave, because they are too busy dealing with a swarm of trolls. A large figure steps in to let them through, and the guards panic when they realize these are warrior Aquela's companions. The short-haired woman confirms their identity and reveals that Aquela has arrived. Meanwhile, Minhyan wakes with the realization that he has been reincarnated, as a tearful mother apologizes to her child. On the battlefield, soldiers prepare to fire on the charging beasts, but an armored figure steps past the front line. The commander orders a retreat, as Asanya leaps down to confront the monsters, demanding to know if they dare look down on her. The warrior stands ready for battle. A knight in blue armor strikes down his targets, telling them they now know their place. Nearby soldiers stare at the dead trolls, having no idea what just happened. This is warrior Asanya, Pershun's only student and the current bearer of the Holy Sword, whose battle lust makes her the first choice for critical missions. Watching her, Reina admits she does not know whether to be relieved or afraid, though she realizes she is not as callous as she imagined. She notices a group of shadowy figures passing by, so her companion suggests they follow them. Sometime later, they arrive at a ruined staging area, where soldiers gather before heading into the maze. Reina thanks a brown-haired archer for helping them through the gates, and he notes that Cariel is a guide, just as he guides arrows from his bow. Reina whispers that he talks funny and looks a lot like the apprentice fighter they met earlier. The archer explains he is fond of guides because he recently learned his brother was gravely injured. Meanwhile, back at the infirmary, the fighter admits to the cleric that they only survived because the guide never gave up on them. The cleric excitedly recalls how the guide saved her from a bandit, and she suggests they go find him together. The fighter immediately changes his mind and says he does not need to see him again, leaving the archer to reflect on the story. The archer wants to thank the guide, prompting Reina to say the story sounds exactly like Cariel, who laughs and calls the guide an amazing person. Cariel and Reina eagerly accept Nora's offer to eat before they enter the maze. They sit down to enjoy the meal. They are grateful for the hospitality. Meanwhile, Cinnamon asks if their new companions really sought them out just to say thank you. They ask to accompany Cinnamon and Inez until they find Aquella, because they are weak and stick out as outsiders. The blue-haired woman agrees, noting that they must be quite skilled to be traveling with a warrior. Cariel admits he is only an apprentice, but says Reina is very talented before digging into the food. Inez explains that she is mid-ranks, while Cinnamon is upper rank, and that they both grew up with Asanya. Reina asks Cariel why Aquella wanted them to accompany him in the first place. Cariel wonders if it is because he has the potential to become a warrior, then jokes that Aquella surely had a good reason. The reason Cariel became a guide instead of a fighter comes down to how mana flows through his body. His energy circulates internally, while others can project it externally or convert it entirely. If Cariel fought an average mid-ranking explorer bare-handed, Reina assumes it would be tough for him, but Cariel would definitely win that fight. However, if both fighters use weapons, Reina confidently predicts Cariel would win again. In reality, it would be nearly impossible for Cariel to win unless his opponent made a mistake, and Reina is horrified by the hypothetical beating. The human body's physical limits are roughly the same for everyone. Ordinary tools wear down with use, but infusing them with energy grants them the traits of living beings. Because Cariel's energy stays inside him, his path as a fighter has a clear ceiling, no matter how hard he works. A shadowy, winged creature emerges from the darkness. A man explains that energy circulation dictates equipment choices, but he cuts himself off to save time. The next day, a soldier orders the group to prepare for their departure into the maze. Nearby, one character eyes an unfinished plate to eat the leftovers, but the other awkwardly excuses themselves to get seconds instead. Cariel unexpectedly runs into Sir Layet in the snowy camp. Sir Layet asks about his travels with a warrior, and reminds Cariel he would be better off as a knight because the life of an explorer is too grueling. When Sir Layet asks about the others, Cariel dismisses them as temporary companions at best. Noting how young they are, Sir Layet warns that they might not survive the day and suggests Cariel dissuade them, though he admits he could not even save his own brother. After Sir Layet leaves, Cariel vows he will never beat himself up over such tragedies again. The armored leader asks if everyone is ready, and the soldiers march forward into the dark corridor. They trek past snowy peaks and trolls to reach their destination and realize they cannot even see the mountain's peak. He considers that if a new master claims the sword, a new demon lord might appear as well, and he warns someone not to be surprised when they finally meet. A dark figure declares that the time has finally come to meet the warriors, but as they walk through the ruins, the looming fear is that a new demon lord might appear as well. Cariel stares into the darkness, vowing to eliminate his target before they can make a move. The maze takes the form of a 7-story tower guarded by random monsters on the lower levels. Staring into the dark void, Cariel admits the place is intimidating, but steps inside because he trusts his companions. Down on the first floor, soldiers stand guard, wondering when the warriors will finally come down. They hear footsteps approaching from their own floor, and are shocked to see warrior Asanya. She demands to know why the sword is still missing, and a guard explains that 3 warriors went up, but never returned. Elsewhere in the shadows, Cariel suddenly halts, realizing something is wrong. A hidden figure notes that Aquella is missing, and warns their ally that an unwelcome guest has just arrived. The man warns that his hospitality ends if they are with the intruder. Cariel wonders why the man needed to take the sword if it returns to him on command. Reina shouts for them to wait and tells Cariel to show them Aquella's sword to prove they are allies. Cariel admits he lost it, causing the stranger to laugh hysterically. She stops laughing and says they remind her of her younger sibling, promising they will be safe as long as they do not cause issues. Reina promises they will not cause any trouble. The stranger apologizes and introduces herself as Inés, while her companion introduces himself as Cinnamon. Cariel hesitates to take her hand, wondering why he is suddenly so cautious. He grabs it and introduces himself, hoping they can be friends. Reina reacts with shock and gets upset that Cariel is already calling Inés a friend. Cariel agrees to back off, though he realizes he has never actually seen Rini use her powers properly. Elsewhere, on the second floor, Asanya lands in a ruined corridor and greets Lysant. Lysant welcomes her back. Lysant complains about Asanya's messy methods, but Asanya reminds him she has no choice because of her ability. Lysant cuts the small talk to ask if Asanya felt the presence too. He sternly tells her he is not in the mood for jokes when she acts shy. Lysant warns her to be on guard because others have ulterior motives, explaining he is here to retrieve the Holy Sword. He adds that they must stand near the demonic realm to handle the presence of the Demon Lord, because shadows grow darker the closer they are to light. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the third floor, Cariel's group finds a circular room with 3 doors and deduces a Cerberus guards the path. They check their notes, which warn that opening a door summons one head, so they must stop the 3 creatures from merging into one. Reina watches Inés and Cinnamon whispering closely, unnerved by the woman's intensity. Because they do not know where the enemies will appear, the group splits up, with one masked warrior taking the right door and another taking the left. Cariel tells the rest of his group to take the middle door so they can stay well matched. As they walk, Cariel worries that they are moving too fast, though he hopes reaching the 7th floor will be quick with the warriors beside them. Elsewhere, 2 armored figures step through their creaking door and immediately face a creature with a single glowing eye. The beast growls and bares its teeth in the darkness. Meanwhile, as Cariel's group climbs the stairs, he asks Inés and Cinnamon why Asanya became a warrior. Inés warns him the answer might be disappointing, but she explains that the 3 of them grew up together. She recalls that Cinnamon loved to play, while Asanya usually lounged around because her talent made her win everything so easily that she lost interest. Their lives changed after a specific event, making Reina eagerly ask if a monster attacked them. Inés scolds Reina for hoping for a disaster, explaining that warrior Perseun had simply visited their village to deal with nearby monsters. While the other villagers cheered and eventually went home, Asanya stayed behind to watch the procession with blazing passion. She stopped playing with them to focus purely on training, eventually becoming a warrior herself. Inés hoped she did not do it just because Perseun looked impressive, while Reina smirks at the thought of knowing a fool. Cariel interrupts to note how strange it is that they have been climbing for a while without seeing a single Cerberus. Reina realizes that 2 of the Cerberi might have gone to the same gate. At the same time, the masked warrior feels a vibration beneath his feet and wonders where the approaching threat is coming from. Realizing he might have to do double the work to survive, he readies his armor and dashes forward to fight. The masked warrior readies himself against the energy. Cariel hesitates, deciding that is a bit too much. The masked figure dashes forward and drives a fist into his target. He reaches down just as a jaw snaps at him. The warrior stands his ground against the screaming beast, then becomes a blur of motion. He swings fast, delivering a heavy strike to the creature. He lands another blow to shatter its defense. He realizes this is just a part of the problem. Sprinting forward, he regrets not hitting it harder. He turns to evade as a shadow looms over him. A knight clashes with a wolf creature, while the armored warrior lunges with a roar. He greets the creature, noting that the beast wants 3 faces instead of just 1. He promises to grant its wish, leaving the creature in shock. He grabs the whimpering beast and tears into it. The tendrils crash down, letting the warrior finally catch his breath. He suddenly pauses, remembering something he almost forgot to do to the monster. He notices one of the creatures is still alive and growling in the rain. Elsewhere, a newcomer approaches the gathering to ask if there is any news on the last gate. One of them worries because he has not returned yet, suggesting they check in case something happened. The armored leader refuses, insisting they will wait because the man is not slow. Meanwhile, it becomes clear that there is no need to rush. Back at the gate, the leader explains that the delay just means nothing is pressing him at the entrance to the 5th floor. Minhyun watches the cloaked figure waiting in the darkness. He refuses to just stand by and watch while people get hurt. Nearby, a man mistakes the figure for a monster before realizing she is a warrior, prompting her to mock his failing eyesight. He protests that he is not even 30 and asks why Helium is standing alone in the dark. Helium tells him to ask one question at a time, noting that this floor is a maze and she has not spotted any monsters yet. A menacing hiss echoes from the shadows, and a masked figure demands silence. A horned entity signals for quiet, announcing that the hour of riddles has begun. The men realize they are facing a warrior as Helium again teases the man about his vision. He demands to know what she is doing here, so she asks for one question at a time. Minhyun recognizes her as she points out the maze of doors. She's warrior Helium, appointed at a young age, and because she wields the power of the sun, groups worship her like a deity. Minhyun admits he would love to live that kind of life, prompting her to tease him for being jealous. Sharp fangs gleam as the masked figure again orders them to be quiet. The winged entity shushes the crowd and declares that the hour of riddles has begun. This is the Sphinx, the monster of the 5th floor, who warns the crowd that they must loosen their minds because razor-sharp wit will be more useful than any blade before challenging them to step forward. One of the warriors decides he does not need to solve the riddle, drawing his sword to just break it into pieces. The warrior turns in anger, demanding to know who dares dismiss his prowess. The Sphinx remarks that whenever humans gather, at least one is worthless garbage, but notes they are fortunate one of them knows his place. The shadowy creature declares it will enlighten those who still live in ignorance. It claims that only it knows the correct path through the constantly shifting maze. Asserting its supreme authority over the tower, the winged monster demands respect. It mocks the armored humans, asking if their arrogance makes them think they are loftier than the sun. Helium steps forward, telling the creature it is just spouting nonsense. Deciding to act before its hatred for humans takes over, the monster demands that the man who stopped the reckless girl step forward. The soldiers are surprised as the creature singles out Cariel, wondering why a mere guide is involved. Reina tells Cariel he does not have to do this, but he steps up and asks what happens if he answers incorrectly. The creature flashes a sharp-toothed grin, implying Cariel already knows the doom that awaits failure. It adds that knowing the consequences will not change anything, leaving Reina terrified by the stakes. She tries again to stop him, but Cariel insists he has no other choice. Stepping forward alone, Cariel tries to recall his father's notes about the Sphinx. The Sphinx notes Cariel's nerves but commends his courage, signaling the start of the trial. When the monster asks what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening, Reina realizes the riddle is familiar. Cariel breaks into a cold sweat, frustrated that he has to face this specific riddle. The Sphinx laughs at his silence, mocking him for struggling with a question it chose out of pity. As the knights debate resorting to brute force, Reina anxiously hopes Cariel has a plan. Cariel exhales and answers that it is a human, because infants crawl on all 4s. He finishes by explaining that adults walk on 2 legs and the elderly use a cane. The Sphinx confirms the answer is correct, so the masked figures and Reina cheer in relief. But the Sphinx interrupts their celebration to announce that it is time for the next riddle. The group is shocked to learn there is more than one, and Reina worriedly calls out Cariel's name. Cariel realizes his notebook only holds a few answers, so he decides to play the role of a foolish human to flatter the monster's ego. Elsewhere, Minhyun looks at a glowing spirit stone and decides he must keep it a secret because the truth is too hard to believe. Back at the trial, Cariel assumes his disguise as the Sphinx asks about 2 sisters who give birth to each other. Cariel recognizes the riddle from his father's notebook, which confirms his flattery is working to get easier questions. He pretends to struggle with the problem to drag it out, before finally answering that it is day and night. The Sphinx praises him for showing respect, while Cariel silently resents having to learn from a monster. The Sphinx mocks him for being a mere talker, but quickly clears its throat to apologize when Cariel glares in anger. Cariel forces himself to bow in submission, prompting the Sphinx to muse about how lonely it is at the top. The Sphinx declares it will not let personal feelings interfere because it senses an ulterior motive in Cariel's pleasant words. It leans in close to peel back his layers and see what lies beneath. Knowing that shadows grow darker the closer they are to light, the Sphinx decides it will read his truth before he answers everything, and Cariel readily agrees to keep it appeased. The Sphinx spreads its wings and asks its final riddle about something that can bring the dead back to life and make you young again. Minhyun realizes this is finally a riddle he does not know. Minhyun realizes logic alone cannot solve the riddle because magic can slow aging but not reverse it. He reasons that if the answer can make him cry or laugh, it affects him directly. He wonders what is born in an instant but lasts a lifetime. The Sphinx watches him, noting that something feels different this time. Minhyun stares at the monster and asks what it is hiding. The Sphinx sheds a single tear. Minhyun tells himself to do this properly, deciding to use creativity over logic to picture the answer. He clenches his eyes shut and visualizes what makes a person young again. He pictures Cariel and hears someone call the boy's name. He realizes what brings the dead back to life as he imagines a crowd where voices call for a teacher and a father. He pictures an embrace that brings laughter and tears, because it is something created in an instant that lasts forever. He snaps his fingers, realizing he is doing it right now. A tear falls as he says the answer is memory. After flashing back to a man expressing regret over killing a talented individual, the Sphinx confirms Cariel is correct. Reina cheers in celebration, while Cariel stares straight ahead. The Sphinx tells Cariel it managed to look through him before he found the answer, making him gulp. Minhwa realizes meeting the Sphinx is a privilege and suspects he understands what is happening. The Sphinx says it knew their encounter would be special and promises a gift to reward him. It tells Minhwa he will rise above everyone else and never forget it. Minhwa gulps as someone snaps their fingers, realizing he is interacting with an entire system rather than just a skill. He asks what is happening as a doorway slides open to reveal a dark corridor. Minhwa refuses to let things end like this. The winged creature tells them they may leave, so he tells his companion to go ahead. He wonders how the Sphinx died because the myth claims it killed itself over defeat. A figure looms in the doorway. Minhwa accepts he has no choice but to ignore the creature's final look. Walking up the stairs, he realizes they have reached the 7th floor and wonders if anyone beat them here. Meanwhile, the maze vibrates, so someone asks Persian what is happening. Persian explains that the Sphinx's riddles have been solved. Minhwa steps forward and stops at a smear of blood. Reina lands nearby and asks if he is okay. He curses that he is fine, realizing the Sphinx meant exactly what it said. The armored figures agree. Warriors Asanya, Lysint, and Helium announce themselves to greet Persian. A figure welcomes them all to one place. The newcomer arrives to retrieve the holy sword. Persian admits the situation is strange because the sword has not appeared yet. Cariel notes the object is different from the one in the ancient ruin, so the group decides to split into teams and search for the sword again. Lysint and Helium admit they are confused about the Demon Lord, because Lysint sensed its presence earlier, but then the feeling vanished. Lysint struggles to explain the vanishing presence to Asanya, who tells him to stop rambling. When asked why she came as she felt nothing, Helium says her reason is obvious, declaring she is here to be chosen by the Holy Sword. Lysint asks if she is serious and invites Asanya to yell at her, but she refuses because she will not be remembered as a warrior who killed one of her own. Meanwhile, 2 figures stand on a high structure. Elsewhere, Cariel wonders why the Holy Sword did not appear until someone spots a figure waving at them. An older man explains he stayed in the rear support due to his age, then notices 2 figures standing behind them. The group gives them space as Sir Layat and Dame Purpura step forward to introduce themselves. Persian thanks them for still treating him like a fellow knight, though Asanya reminds him he chose to relinquish his title. Cariel asks about the bad terms between warriors and knights, learning that the Holy See holds authority to produce warriors for 50 years after a demon lord appears. The tension exists because the demon lord appeared twice in a row, interrupting the shift of power back to the crown. Inez tells Cinnamon to search the 7th floor, prompting Reina to suggest they look for the sword as well, since they are just waiting around. Instead of searching, they hide to observe 3 cloaked figures having a tense exchange between the stone columns. She demands to know if he was the one running his mouth, furious that he embarrassed her in front of everyone. The cloaked figure clamps a hand over her companion's mouth to silence his questions, while the other apologizes for breaking protocol. Sitting down to rest, Cariel realizes the holy sword is missing and wonders if he misinterpreted the prophecy. He questions if the mother of monsters meant something else, and if the prophecy is actually pointing to a higher floor they haven't reached yet. He tells Reina he will be right back, and dashes away before she can stop him. He realizes that if his guess is correct, he knows exactly where the sword must be. Left behind, Reina huffs in frustration. A woman approaches, disappointed to have missed Cariel, and Reina demands to know why she is suddenly trying to get so close to him. The woman warns Reina that she cannot escape the consequences of her actions, and asks if she is hiding a secret she doesn't want others to hear. Elsewhere, a man yells in frustration over a delayed payment. In the darkness, the system announces that the curse skill has activated, forcing the user to experience their target's emotions. Meanwhile, Eldrick meets a young knight in a secluded blind spot of the maze, noting that it is the perfect place to avoid being overheard. He warns the knight about the danger, prompting the young man to tell him not to sound so ominous, because there are still people around. Eldrick asked what the knights had been doing lately, hoping to extract some useful information. The young knight's response is completely unsatisfactory, as he merely complains that they are unhappy about their reduced pay. Realizing he will have to piece the puzzle together himself, Eldrick thinks about the knight's suspicious presence. He suspects they are worried because the Demon Lord appeared twice in rapid succession. Yet the Holy See has remained completely silent. Whispers have spread that the second Demon Lord never actually appeared, and that the Knights are here to verify if the Holy See fabricated the entire incident. Eldrick knows the Knights have always resented the warriors who wield the Holy Sword, and have long harbored a desire to step out of their shadow. Eldrick theorizes the Holy See hasn't selected a wielder yet, so the Knights have a chance to retrieve the sword first. The weary man mutters to himself, lost in thought. Eldrick wonders why the Crown sent only 2 Knights, because a joint mission would make more sense to assert their claim. tiring of his own theories. Eldritch asks the knights directly why they are here. When they claim they came for the sword, Eldritch suspects the crown ordered them here. The knight admits they have their own doubts about the crown's orders, and is shocked when Eldritch questions their motives. A warrior points out the demon lord is just a political card, and the Holy See cannot claim innocence while the sword is missing. The knight asks if they doubt the prophecy, and the warrior suggests the entire thing is a scheme to strengthen the Holy See's authority. When the warrior suggests Perseun sided with the demon lord, the knight glares and warns him he has crossed a line. The warrior apologizes, blaming the rumors for his words. The knight suggests he take a leave, but the warrior refuses because he must provide for his family. So the knight tells him having a home is what matters most. Elsewhere, the group searches the rocky terrain, but one character decides to slack off since the sword is nowhere to be found. A knight looks out at the rocks, confused, while Eldritch asks if he is sure he has no other motives. Eldritch stares, demanding to know why the knight would do something foolish when he has a family. The confused young knight steps back as a mechanical arm emerges from the dark. Eldritch asks what he is supposed to make of that. The knight hesitates and gasps for air. He breathes heavily and steps forward, gripping his weapon. Cario finds a stairwell leading upward and an exit. He realizes the scattered clues are finally starting to click into place. He steps forward into the light to survey the desolate landscape ahead. The harsh wind confirms he is out in the open, so he decides to keep moving through the snow to see what he can find.